Hello and thank you for clicking on the video. In this video I'm going to be showing you my favourite Titan build I've used, and it is insanely powerful and extremely simple to get set up and use. The main focus around this build is just to slide, use our powered melee and devastate everything in front of us using solar fire damage. I'm now going to show you what that looks like against a load of mages and a champion. So we are just going to simply slide, use our powered melee, and it's going to kill everything in front of us. Again, slide, powered melee, and we get 3 charges of this. Worst case, we're going to end up leaving something so weak that we can just one-tap it. This will melt bosses, mages, champions, you name it. Anything that we can get close to use our powered melee. Now in terms of the build, we can use 2 exotic items for this build. The first one, which I use, is a exotic class item, and the important role for this item is the Spirit of Syntheseps, which improves our melee damage when we're surrounded. This includes powered melee damage. The second one we have on here is powered melee or finisher final blows, unleash a damage and explosion. This is just a helpful role. The most important one is Spirit of Syntheseps. Now the second item you can use is the Syntheseps arms, which do the exact same thing. When we're surrounded, we gain increased melee and super damage, as well as improved weapon handling and reload speed. All we're after is the increased melee damage. So if you're unable to get the Titan mark with Syntheseps and Severance, then by all means, please just use the Syntheseps exotic arm piece. Obviously, we are using this because we want to power up our powered melee damage, and this is what we are going to use for that. In terms of the build, I personally like to use the Void Super, and that will be explained why in a minute. For the powered melee, we're using Frenzied Blade. This is because this can come with 3 charges, which means we get 3 charges off our solar powered melee. Meanwhile, if we were to use any of these other ones, we'd only get 1 charge. In terms of grenade, again, you can do personal preference. I like to use the Glacier Grenade. I also like to use the Shackle Grenade. You can use whatever you want. It's personal preference. In terms of aspects, these are ones you have to use. Knockout means that when we wound a target or break a shield, we're going to get more melee range and damage for a short time. Also gives us the amplified buff, which is going to give us some more survivability. The most important one, Consecration. This means when we slide and activate our melee ability, we will launch a wave of solar damage towards targets in front of us, which will scorch. In terms of fragments, we've got the Facile Protection. This is in every build, but it's actually very useful in this build for the plus 10 melee, and because we're going to be constantly surrounded by enemies. And we want to be surrounded, so that way our Syntheseps gives us more damage. We're going to use Facet of Balance. This means rapidly defeating targets with light damage, aka our solar melee. It's going to grant us melee energy. And then we've got Facet of Ruin. This means those solar ignitions we are causing with our solar melee is going to give a bigger area of effect. And then for the final one, I've gone for Facet of Purpose, and this is linked to our Void Super. This just means when we pick up an Orb of Power, we are going to be getting Overshield. Again, since we're going to be running at stuff head first because we're a melee build, we're going to want a bit more survivability, hence why I went for the Overshield. You might be asking why I'm not using the Facet of Courage, as our solar abilities deal increased damage to targets affected by darkness debuffs. Well, because we're using a technically strand melee, it does not count towards this. We are getting solar damage, but we are using a strand ability. So that would not provide any benefit to this build. In terms of weapons, honestly, it's entirely personal preference. I like using the Wish Ender to deal with the barrier champions, and it's also a long range weapon. If there's anything short range we want to deal with, more than likely our melee will deal with it. So I've chose for the Wish Ender for that long range damage and for the barrier champions. I've then gone for a power shotgun. This is just so then when we use our melee, let's say the enemy does survive, we are then able to be close enough to unload shotgun rounds into them, and that should help finish off the target. For my heavy, I've gone for a solar rocket launcher. Solar is better this season. It's just my go-to rocket launcher. Just personal preference again. Again, you could use a sword and swap out the shotgun, so that way if you don't kill what you've used your powered melee on, you can swap to your sword. It's just personal preference. The main bulk of this build is the Syntheseps, arms, or the class item with Syntheseps rolled on it, alongside your everything in this build subclass here. In terms of stats, you might be wondering why melee isn't as high as we can go, because the enhanced benefit does say increase the damage done by your melee attacks. However, this only counts towards actual melee attacks, not powered melee attacks. So for stats, I would get this as close to 100 as you can without wasting too many points over the top, because we just want this to get our melee ability cooldown as low as we can. The enhanced benefit is not going to do anything for us here. I've then focused on health, as we're going to be running at stuff face first. Survivability is going to be key, because we're going to have no cover. We're just going to be charging at everything head on. So I've focused most of my points then into health. I've then also chucked a few points into grenade, just to give our grenade cooldown back, and just let the other stats sort of do what they want to do. These aren't too important. If you do want to throw a few more in super or class, that's entirely fine. I wouldn't bother with weapon, as it's a melee build. Weapons are sort of the second damage source. Our main damage source we are focusing on is our powered melee. In terms of perks on the tree, for the first column, use whatever you want. It's entirely up to you. For the second column, I recommend the top two. If you end up using a scout rifle on your build, you can always go for the bottom. For the third column, I like the rapid precision hits with solar weapons, or stasis weapons will give us elemental buffs. This is just for if I want to use a solar weapon to give me radiant, which I sometimes swap to. And then for the second one, sometimes I like to rock a sidearm with this build, hence why I've gone for the sidearm one. For the third column, stasis or strand debuffed non-boss combatants take increased solar damage. This is why I use the frost grenade, so that I can debuff them with a frost debuff and then get more solar damage from our powered melee attack. Then for the second one on this column, shoulder to shoulder is good for raids, just means more damage resistance. And then for the final column, I would go with shield crush. This means while we have void overshield, which we are going to be getting quite a lot, our melee is going to recharge a lot faster. So not only are we going to get benefit from just having survivability, we're also going to have melee come back from just trying to survive longer as well. And then for the second one, honestly, entirely up to you. If you're going to use solar weapons, I'd go for the radiant shrapnel. If you're going to use strand, go for tangled web. Again, stasis, go for the bottom one. In terms of how this build works, it is insane at close range. You will melt anything that you can physically get your hands to. The only downside is ranged enemies. So for example, raids, in the Crota raid, this build melts Crota. I get people asking me what build I'm using all the time when I run Crota with this build, and I tell them it, and they are just in disbelief at the damage you can pull off with this build. To enemies that are just close to you, Crota is the perfect example. However, if you had Oryx, you wouldn't be able to utilise the powered melees too much. However, during Oryx, you've still got times when you would have to deal with ogres or strong bosses still, which means the powered melee wouldn't be useless. Which is also another reason why I went for the Void Super, is so then we've got some more range damage. So during a raid like Oryx, you could deal with all the ads and the strong mages using your powered melee attacks, and then for DPS phase, you would just use your super, your rocket launcher. You can just adjust the build as you see fit. Another thing you could also do for raids is you could just swap out your powered melee so that it's changed. So you could change out your exotic. So this is just a raid exotic class item I like to use for long ranged raids. Again, Oryx as an example. We've still got the core of the build, or part of the build, where we've got 3 charges of our solar powered melee, which means we can still melt everything that's close to us, while also giving ourselves more super damage and overcharging our weapons using a different exotic item. The core of the build is this, the Frenzied Blade powered melee, along with the Consecration aspect. And then you can just adapt the build however you want around those 2 factors. Just to recap, if you wanted ranged damage, you would swap to a different item, such as Star Eater for the Titan, or a exotic class item with Star Eater on it and Eternal Warrior. Or for close range encounters, you would use Syntheseps, or again a class item with Syntheseps on it. I hope you found this video useful. This build is extremely easy to use and extremely easy to set up, and the damage output you get from using this build is unreal. Thank you very much.